Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into what is arguably the single worst business decision in human history. Seriously. Imagine a massive, seemingly invincible corporate empire just cracking at its foundations, crumbling to dust, right? And from those ashes, a tiny red logo emerges to completely take over the globe. We're going to explore the day a titan literally chose to die rather than evolve, and unpack the catastrophic strategic arrogance that allowed a money-bleeding startup to completely redefine how we consume entertainment.
And the whole story hinges on this exact number, $50 million. Picture this, it's the year 2000. Reed Hastings, the co-founder of a small, struggling, kinda unknown startup, walks into a corporate boardroom. His company was losing money fast, the business model was ridiculously expensive to maintain, and he was desperately looking for an exit. So he offers to sell his entire company to the reigning king of entertainment for just $50 million. And the outcome of that meeting? Yeah, it altered history forever.
Okay, let's kick things off with Section 1, the untouchable retail giant.
To really wrap our heads around the depth of this blunder, we have to look at the absolute heights of their empire. Back then, Blockbuster wasn't just successful, they were an untouchable behemoth. I mean, if you dropped pins on a world map for every location they had, the globe would basically be covered. We're talking over 9,000 stores worldwide, millions of fiercely loyal customers, and billions of dollars in pure profit. They absolutely ruled the entertainment world. Nobody else even came close. But it wasn't just about the numbers. Going to Blockbuster wasn't an errand. It was a definitive cultural experience. Think back to the 90s and early 2000s. It was the ultimate Friday night ritual. You'd walk through those doors, instantly smell the popcorn, and just spend time walking the aisles, hunting for the perfect VHS or DVD. From the outside, their business model looked absolutely flawless, bulletproof even. Which brings us to Section 2, the punishment business model. See, beneath that perfectly curated, family-friendly facade hid a pretty dark secret. A massive chunk of their profit didn't actually come from renting movies, but from punishing their own customers. If you brought a movie back just one day late, the giant ticking clock of Blockbuster system hit you with a brutal financial penalty. They were raking in hundreds of millions of dollars a year purely from late fees. Actually, tech lore tells us that Reed Hastings got furiously angry when he got slapped with a $40 late fee for returning Apollo 13 a few days late. Staring at that receipt, it just hit him. There has to be a better way. And this brilliantly illustrates the clash between the incumbent and the disruptor. Hastings founded Netflix in 1997. Now remember, high-speed internet wasn't really a thing yet, so Netflix operated entirely through the mail. You paid a flat monthly subscription, ordered online, and the DVDs arrived in those iconic red envelopes. But here's the absolute game changer. You could keep them as long as you wanted. Zero late fees. None. Blockbuster built an empire on penalizing you. Netflix built a model on giving you freedom.
All right, Section 3, the $50 million joke.
So that brings us right back to that fateful boardroom meeting in the year 2000, where these two vastly different philosophies collided head-on. Because despite Netflix's super customer-friendly model, the logistics of mailing physical DVDs was incredibly expensive. They were bleeding cash. But Hastings managed to score a critical, last-minute meeting with John Antioco, the all-powerful CEO of Blockbuster. Hastings cut straight to the chase. He proposes that Blockbuster buy Netflix for that $50 million figure. In exchange, the Netflix team would be absorbed to completely build and run Blockbuster's online presence. It was a lifeline for Netflix, and honestly, a golden ticket to the future for Blockbuster.
But here's the absolutely mind-blowing part. John Antioco didn't even take the presentation seriously. In his mind, Netflix was just a tiny, insignificant niche. He firmly believed that mailing DVDs or operating online could never, ever compete with his massive physical empire. He literally viewed the offer as a joke, laughed right in Hastings' face, and kicked him out of the office. No way, right?
Section 4, trapped in the physical world. Well, that turned out to be a fatal miscalculation. Hastings left that boardroom feeling mocked and dismissed, but with a burning mission to completely destroy the giant that just laughed at him. And technology was about to hand him the ultimate weapon. Look at how fast this timeline moves. Just a few years after that 2000 rejection, high-speed internet floods into households everywhere, totally flipping the script. Boom. 2007, Netflix pivots and launches instant streaming. No more waiting for the mail, thousands of movies are instantly on your screen. Blockbuster tried to react, but they were completely outpaced. By 2010, the giant had fallen, declaring total bankruptcy.
The tragic irony here is that Blockbuster's greatest asset literally became its fatal trap. When they finally realized the existential threat of streaming, it was way too little, way too late. They were bogged down by extremely expensive commercial leases for those thousands of locations, just dragging an absolute mountain of debt behind them. When panic set in and they finally tried to eliminate late fees to compete with online models, their core revenue just collapsed. The empire completely bled out.
And that leads us to Section 5, the ultimate cost of arrogance. When the dust finally settled, we were left looking at two completely divergent destinies born from a single 12-minute meeting. On one side, you have Netflix, a company now worth hundreds of billions of dollars, fundamentally redefining how the entire planet consumes entertainment. And on the other side, Blockbuster. Out of those 9,000 stores, only one single lonely location remains open in the entire world, sitting out there in the snowy landscape of Bend, Oregon. It operates more like a museum of nostalgia than a functioning business.
The fall of Blockbuster is the ultimate, textbook definition of strategic arrogance. It's that fatal corporate flaw where leadership flat out refuses to innovate or take emerging threats seriously simply because they believe their current empire is too big to fail. They thought those physical stores were a permanent moat. But as we've seen, in the business world, hubris is a death sentence. If you refuse to evolve, no matter how big you are, the future will simply run you over.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to consider as we reflect on how incredibly fast the world can change. Do you still remember those Friday night trips to Blockbuster? You know, the smell of the popcorn, the aisles of VHS tapes? Or are you part of the generation that grew up straight with the endless streaming library of Netflix? It's wild to think about how quickly an empire can vanish just because one executive decided to laugh. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.